So like a lot of people, I really fell into advertising. I had been educated in mathematics and computer science. Advertising was probably one of the last things that I had thought about doing. And I actually only took a job in the in an advertising agency simply because I needed money, and it seemed like the right thing to do. So I spent my first 3 years in advertising actively trying not to be involved in the real creation of the advertising itself. So I did a lot of really weird jobs. I started in the mailroom, I worked in print traffic, and after about 3 years I found myself as the head of the traffic department, believe it or not, and I think I was about 22 or 23 or 24 at the time, and I hated it, and I really sort of had this kind of realization that I could either commit to advertising and try and find something worthwhile doing in the agency, or actually quit and try and do something else. And so I chose the former. I went to the president at the agency at the time and I said, is there something else I could do? And I think because I have an English accent, he suggested that I become a planner. And so that was really my journey into planning. It was probably a story that couldn't be repeated these days. It was just a different world in the agency business back then. But what happened was, as soon as I started really being a planner and thinking about advertising strategy, I realized that that what you were asking from people was their attention, and in order to get it, you had to give them back something meaningful in return. And at that point, I was working at a not very great agency, and so I thought, well, maybe what we can give people in return is really great advertising. Is advertising that moves them and makes them feel something. And so I basically worked my way, and I sort of set my goal on trying to get to some of the best agencies in the country. And after many years, I actually made it. I worked at Goodby Silverstein in San Francisco, and then I ended up working at Fallon in Minneapolis. And what was interesting about having been able to do that was I realized at one point that even that wasn't enough. That you could be working on the best advertising in the world, but it still wasn't enough to be giving people, and it still wasn't enough to be worth the attention or the aggravation that you were actually causing in people's lives. And that realization coincided, I think, with the rise of a whole bunch of really interesting technologies, social media, the web, so on and so forth. And that kind of gave me and some of my other partners this sort of idea that there was a different way to actually ask for the attention of people that you wanted to convince about something, and that was to actually, rather than say things and create these ads, was to actually do things for them and create services, create great experiences and do things. And the more I sat in the agency world, the more it felt like all of that interesting work was being done outside of the mainstream agencies. And so that's really what led me and my partners to sort of starting up Zeus Jones, starting up a separate company. And I think it all goes back to that belief that if you want people to give you something, you've got to give them something valuable back in return. And increasingly, I think the most direct way of doing that is to actually make something that they love, rather than to create a piece of film that tries to convince them that they love a product, or create an ad that tries to convince them that they love a product. So that's really what we're trying to do at Zeus Jones.